What if everything you were taught about the pyramids is wrong, not slightly off, not missing a few details, but fundamentally, catastrophically wrong? What if the greatest structures ever built on this planet were not the work of copper chisels and hemp ropes, but evidence of something so advanced that modern engineering still cannot fully explain it? Drop your craziest theory in the comments right now. Smash that like button if you're ready to question everything, and subscribe so you don't miss what we uncover next. Because today, we're pulling back the curtain on the most protected lie in human history. Let's get something straight. This isn't about little green men. This isn't about ancient astronaut cartoons or blurry photographs of UFOs. This is about math. This is about physics. This is about measurements so precise that they make our best engineers scratch their heads and quietly change the subject. We are going to visit 5 sites today. 5 places scattered across different continents, built by civilizations that supposedly never spoke to each other, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. And yet, when you look at the evidence side by side, the coincidences pile up so high that they stop looking like coincidences at all. They start looking like a pattern, a signature, a fingerprint of something we don't have a name for yet. Today we're going to talk about drill holes that shouldn't exist, stone blocks heavier than anything our cranes can lift, mathematical constants embedded in architecture thousands of years before they were officially discovered, and tunnels so tight that the massive objects inside them could not have physically entered through the doors. What you're about to learn might not just change how you see the pyramids, it might change how you see our entire species. So, take a breath, and let's begin with the one place everyone thinks they understand, but almost nobody actually does. Giza, Egypt. You've seen the postcards. You've watched the documentaries. 3 pyramids, a sphinx, a lot of sand. Simple, right? A pharaoh wanted a fancy tomb, so he ordered 100,000 slaves to stack rocks for 20 years. Case closed, move along, nothing to see here. But here's where the official story starts to crack. The Great Pyramid of Khufu contains approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. The average block weighs about 2.5 tons, but some of the granite beams above the King's Chamber weigh up to 80 tons each. These granite blocks were quarried in Aswan, over 800 kilometers to the south, and transported to the building site. Now, conventional archaeology tells us this was done with wooden sledges, rollers, and rivers. Fine. But let's talk about what they did with the stone once it arrived. The base of the Great Pyramid is a near-perfect square. Each side measures approximately 230.4 meters. The difference between the longest and shortest side is less than 4.4 centimeters. That's a variance of under 0.02% across a structure covering over 5 hectares. For comparison, most modern construction projects consider a variance of 0.5% to be excellent work. The ancient Egyptians were 25 times more precise, and they did it without laser levels, without GPS, without satellite surveying. But it gets stranger. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a degree. Not magnetic north, which shifts over time, but true celestial north. To achieve this, builders would have needed either incredibly advanced astronomical observation methods or instruments we have no evidence they possessed. Modern surveyors using digital equipment struggle to match this precision. And then there's the math that makes physicists uncomfortable. If you take the perimeter of the pyramid's base and divide it by its height, you get a number remarkably close to 2 times pi. The ratio of the base to the height closely approximates the golden ratio. The pyramid sits almost exactly on the 30th parallel north. Its position, when expressed in coordinates, reads 29.9792 degrees north, a number that is identical to the speed of light in meters per second for the first 6 digits. Coincidence? Maybe. But when coincidences keep stacking up, at some point you have to ask whether someone was sending a message. The mainstream explanation is that these are emergent properties of the pyramid's slope angle, which was chosen for structural stability. Fair enough. But that still leaves the question of how a Bronze Age civilization executed this with such flawless precision. The mortar between the casing stones, which once covered the entire pyramid in the polished white limestone, was applied so thinly that a razor blade cannot fit between them. We cannot replicate this today. Not because we lack the knowledge, but because we lack the patience and the economic incentive. And that should tell you something. Now, let's leave Egypt for a moment and fly 12,000 kilometers southeast to a tiny island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where the mystery deepens in ways nobody expected. Pohnpei, Micronesia. If you've never heard of Nan Madol, you're not alone. Most history textbooks pretend it doesn't exist. And there's a good reason for that. It doesn't fit any comfortable narrative. Imagine 92 artificial islands connected by a network of canals, built entirely from basalt columns, some weighing up to 50 tons each. The total weight of stone used in construction is estimated at 750,000 tons. That's comparable to the Great Pyramid of Khufu, but the Great Pyramid was built by an empire of millions. Nan Madol was built by a population of maybe 25,000 people who had no metal, no wheels, and no draft animals. The basalt columns were quarried on the opposite side of the island and somehow transported across dense jungle and swampland, then placed in seawater with remarkable precision. The walls of the complex rise 8 meters above the waterline. Engineering analyses suggest that moving even a single 50-ton column through tropical jungle without roads or wheeled vehicles would require a coordinated workforce far exceeding the island's total population. Local legends are specific and consistent. They say Nan Madol was built by twin sorcerers named Olisipa and Olosopa, who arrived from across the sea and commanded the stones to fly through the air using magical sounds. Researchers who dismiss this as mythology still have no alternative explanation that accounts for the logistics. Modern magnetic surveys of the site have detected anomalies that cause compasses to behave erratically. Conspiracy theorists argue the basalt columns are not just building material, but components of an energy grid, pointing out that from aerial photographs, the layout of the canals resembles a circuit board. In 1907, the German colonial governor Victor Berg opened one of the tombs at Nan Madol and reportedly found bones of individuals significantly larger than normal humans. He died the next morning under unexplained circumstances. Local inhabitants still warn visitors that the ancient rulers of Nan Madol punish those who disturb their rest. The scientific community offers no satisfying explanation for Nan Madol. Some researchers suggest the columns could have been floated on rafts through the canals, but experiments with basalt logs of this weight have shown that rafts capable of supporting them would need to be absurdly large, far wider than the canals themselves. The stones are here. The people who move them are gone. And the only explanation they left behind involves flight and sound. Remember those words. They'll come up again. Now, let's jump to the opposite side of the planet, to a place 13,000 feet above sea level in Bolivia, where the impossibility reaches a level that makes even the most skeptical engineers go quiet. Puma Punku, Bolivia. This is not a place you visit casually. It sits on the Altiplano, a windswept plateau at nearly 4,000 meters elevation, where the air is so thin that physical labor becomes exhausting within minutes. And yet, someone built a complex here out of andesite and red sandstone blocks so precisely machined that they look like they came off a factory production line. The andesite blocks at Puma Punku feature perfectly flat surfaces, 90-degree angles with zero visible deviation, and interlocking H-shaped joints cut with a uniformity that suggests standardized tooling. Some blocks weigh over 100 tons. The nearest andesite quarry is 90 kilometers away, across mountain terrain, at a time when the local culture supposedly had no wheels and no strong draft animals. But the precision is what truly breaks the narrative. Researchers have documented identical drill holes and channels cut into the hardest volcanic stone with what appears to be machine-level consistency. Bronze tools, which are the most advanced implements attributed to the Tiwanaku civilization, cannot cut andesite. They bend, they dull, they shatter. Experiments with bronze chisels on andesite produce rough, uneven surfaces that look nothing like the mirror-smooth plains at Puma Punku. Alternative theorists have proposed everything from sonic drilling to extraterrestrial machining tools. Some point to local legends that describe the builders as beings who could soften stone using a liquid derived from a plant. Others see the H-blocks as evidence of a modular construction system, essentially ancient prefabricated architecture. which would require engineering knowledge considered impossible for a pre-Columbian society. The conventional archaeological response is that the Tiwanaku people were more advanced than we give them credit for, and that time and patience can achieve remarkable results with simple tools. This is probably partially true, but it still doesn't explain the 90-kilometer transport problem, or the machine-like precision, or why this site appears to have been violently destroyed by some catastrophic event. Its massive blocks scattered like toys, as if a giant had kicked over the table. Something happened here, something big, and no one has a clean answer. Let's keep the momentum going and travel north to Lebanon, where the stones get so heavy that the mystery stops being academic and becomes almost absurd. Baalbek, Lebanon. In the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter lies the Trilithon, 3 stone blocks each weighing approximately 800 tons. To put that in perspective, that's the weight of 500 cars compressed into a single piece of limestone. The largest mobile crane on Earth, the Liebherr LTM-11200, can lift about 1,200 tons under perfect conditions, but it takes months to assemble on site and requires a perfectly level concrete pad. The Romans, to whom this temple is attributed, had none of that. But the real shock is in the quarry, about 400 meters away. There lies the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a partially extracted block weighing over 1,000 tons. And next to it, discovered only in 2014, lies an even larger stone, estimated at 1,650 tons. It's the biggest cut stone in the known ancient world. It was shaped, partially extracted from the bedrock, and then abandoned, as if the builders simply stopped mid-job and walked away. Engineers have calculated that moving the trilithon blocks by human muscle alone would require approximately 40,000 men pulling simultaneously, but 40,000 people cannot physically fit around a single stone. There is no road wide enough. The wooden rollers would splinter to dust under the pressure. The ramps would need to be impossibly steep. The mainstream explanation involves a combination of ramps, levers, and enormous organized labor forces over long periods. This is plausible in theory, but has never been demonstrated in practice at this scale. Nobody has ever moved an 800-ton block using ancient technology, not even as an experiment. Legends from the region describe a different story. Ancient texts attribute Baalbek's construction not to the Romans, but to a far older civilization. Some accounts mention giants or gods who could command stone to rise. The Bible itself references a race of giants, the Nephilim, who existed before the flood. Islamic tradition holds that Baalbek was originally built by Cain or by Jinn at King Solomon's command. These are myths, certainly, but myths usually grow from a seed of something real. There's another detail that deserves attention. Acoustic experiments conducted at the site have shown that the massive stone platform resonates at a specific low frequency when struck. Some independent researchers believe this was intentional, that the entire foundation was designed to vibrate in harmony with the Earth's natural frequency, a concept known as Schumann resonance. Whether this served a practical engineering purpose or something we don't yet understand remains an open question. Across the ancient world, from the King's Chamber in Giza to the temples of Malta, we find structures that seem tuned to specific frequencies. Pattern or coincidence? You decide. And here's a detail that rarely gets mentioned. The Roman temple was built on top of the Trilithon, not alongside it. The Romans inherited a foundation they didn't build. The question isn't how Rome moved these stones. The question is, who was there before Rome, and what technology did they have that we've lost? For our final stop, we're going underground, deep underground, into a place that might be the single most uncomfortable artifact in all of Egyptian archaeology. The Serapeum of Saqqara, Egypt. In 1850, French archaeologist Auguste de Mariette followed a half-buried sphinx head in the desert and ended up discovering something that shook him to his core. He found an avenue of statues leading to a sealed entrance in the rock. The entrance was plugged with stone so massive he had to use dynamite to blast through it. Inside, he found himself in a subterranean labyrinth stretching hundreds of meters. Carved into the bedrock walls were 24 niches, and in those niches sat colossal boxes made of solid granite, basalt, and diorite. Each box is roughly 4 meters long, over 3 meters tall, and weighs between 70 and 100 tons. The lids alone weigh 30 tons. These are the largest precision-machined objects in the ancient world. When Mariette pried open the first lid, he expected mummies, gold, treasure. Instead, he found absolutely nothing. The boxes were empty. Sealed for 3,000 years, untouched by grave robbers, the dust on the floor still bearing the footprints of the last workers to leave, and yet completely empty. This alone is bizarre. Why build a 100-ton granite container with surgical precision and then leave it vacant? But the real mystery is in the craftsmanship. Engineer Christopher Dunn brought precision measuring instruments into the Serapeum and placed them against the interior surfaces of these boxes. He found flatness accurate to within a few microns, roughly the width of a bacterium. The internal corners were perfect 90-degree angles. The surfaces were polished to an optical finish. Think about what that means. Someone had to climb inside a granite box in near total darkness with only an oil lamp for light, and polish the hardest commercially available natural stone to a tolerance that rivals modern CNC machinery, with copper chisels in the Bronze Age. If that doesn't bother you, you're not paying attention. But here's the question that truly has no answer. The tunnels of the Serapeum are narrow. Two people can barely pass each other. Some corridors turn at sharp right angles. The boxes weigh 100 tons. The lids weigh 30. How do you move a 100-ton box through a passage barely wide enough for two men? How do you turn it at a 90-degree corner with no room for levers? How do you lower it into a niche that is below floor level, with a clearance of just 40 centimeters between the box and the wall? There is physically no space for the tools, the people, or the leverage required. Conventional archaeology suggests ramps, rollers, and lubrication. But no one has ever demonstrated how this would work in practice inside a confined underground tunnel. The math simply does not add up. Alternative researchers have proposed that the boxes were placed first and the tunnels carved around them, but the geological evidence doesn't support this. Others suggest acoustic levitation, anti-gravity technology, or methods involving controlled vibration of stone. Whatever the truth is, the Serapeum remains perhaps the most stubborn puzzle in archaeology. Here sits physical evidence of precision manufacturing at a level we can barely achieve today. Locked in tunnels too small to have delivered it. Sealed for millennia with nothing inside. And perhaps the most unsettling detail of all, some of the boxes bear crude hieroglyphic inscriptions that were clearly scratched on long after the original construction. The handwriting is rough, almost childlike, contrasting violently with the mirror-smooth polish of the granite beneath. It's as if a later, far less advanced civilization stumbled upon these objects and tried to claim them as their own, scribbling names on masterpieces they couldn't begin to comprehend. The implication is staggering. The builders of the Serapeum were not the Egyptians we read about in textbooks. They were someone else, someone earlier, someone whose skills their own descendants could not match, let alone surpass. So, where does all of this leave us? We've crossed oceans and continents today. We've stood at the base of the Great Pyramid and stared at numbers that shouldn't be there. We've walked the canals of Nan Madol and heard legends of flying stones. We've touched the factory-cut blocks of Puma Punku and asked how bronze cuts andesite. We've stood in the shadow of Baalbek and realized that no crane on Earth could have placed those foundation stones. And we've crawled through the Serapeum and faced boxes that seem to mock our understanding of what's possible. These places share no common language, no common religion, no documented contact. They are separated by thousands of years and thousands of kilometers, and yet they share something that cannot be coincidence. They share impossible precision. They share stones too heavy for their builders to move. They share legends about sound, about gods, about a knowledge that was lost. It would be easy and comfortable to say aliens did it, a neat little bow on an uncomfortable package. But I think the truth is both simpler and more terrifying. I think we have fundamentally underestimated what human beings are capable of. Or, more accurately, I think we have fundamentally underestimated what human beings once knew and then forgot. Somewhere in our distant past, someone understood physics in ways we are only now beginning to rediscover. They understood acoustics, resonance, material science, and astronomy at a level that we arrogantly assumed was invented in the last few centuries. They encoded their knowledge not in books that could burn, but in stone that would endure. And we walk past their message every day, snapping selfies, buying souvenirs, and never stopping to ask the most important question of all. Not who built them, but what else did they know that we haven't found yet? That question should keep you up tonight. And if it does, come back here, because we're just getting started. Tell me in the comments which site disturbed you the most. Which one keeps you thinking? And if this video made you look at history differently, even for a second, hit subscribe. We're going deeper next time. Much deeper. See you.